So, in the midst of like three different scripts that I'm working on right now, yeah, three projects that are big enough to warrant scripts for them. You know how fucking rare that is if you've been around my channel a lot. But anyway, today I just came across a post on socials about maybe 10 minutes ago talking about how Gen Z is like down 87% in terms of alcohol purchases and consumption. And I just wanted to talk a bit about alcohol in general and why I don't think it's the worst thing, even if it's not really my thing. Now, let me just get this straight right off the bat, because this is the point that I'm wanting to hammer in with the video. Alcohol is not the worst thing out there. When it becomes an issue is when people are irresponsible with it, and especially when they allow it to get to a point where they are dependent on the alcohol. And some people may say, oh, they're never dependent. Some people will physically make themselves dependent. Because if you get too far in, whenever you try to stop, withdrawal symptoms will keep you coming back in. And now, this isn't a shot at Gen X. This isn't a shot at millennials. This isn't a shot at boomers, although there's plenty of shots that can be made at them. This is just a general discussion. And keep in mind with what I'm about to say, this doesn't mean that all these situations are the worst thing ever, and there's obviously people that have come out of it. Now, with that being said, I feel that the biggest reason for this change is likely due to how Gen Z grew up with so many authority figures, whether it be parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, teachers, priests, falling into that path of horrific addiction and seeing what it has done, not just if it's in your own family, not just to the family, but also to the person themselves, to their to what happens to them at work, to their general everyday interactions. And it is, if you can't control it and it controls you, it is one of the worst things that can alter your behavior. Again, of course, only if you're not responsible with it. It's a fine line to walk. You got to know your tolerance, and a lot of people don't. But we've seen how people can get into trouble, even if it's not through our own families. Just like look up police reports and look how many are drunk, and look how many of the incarcerated people were drunk when they got arrested. It's going to be a shocking amount, I can tell you that much. But I think that just seeing that, Gen Z has been the generation where they've been the least comfortable with what's been handed down to them since the boomer generation, probably. Or, okay, I think it's called the silent generation. Because if I remember properly, like, I know boomers were born like during to near the end of World War II. And I think silent generation is before that. They're the last generation that truly had a really fragile economy with how everything was during the Great Depression and the 30s. And they had to truly fight for every little thing financially, while not knowing that in just about 10 years, or, okay, I shouldn't say 10 years because a lot of the silent generation was growing up at the time, but you know what I'm saying. Most of them had no clue at all. In fact, I'd go as far as to say none of them had any clue that in 1939, oh shit, a war would start in Europe that would later come to America and be known as World War II. And it's just crazy to see how a lot of it's unfolded, with generation after generation getting less and less comfortable with what they are, with each generation getting less and less comfortable with what they're given because it continues to diminish more and more. And Gen Z is kind of the tipping point where We have people like my little sister who can pull in 80 hours in 2 weeks, works 2 jobs, can't even afford an apartment, only having 1 day off. And in her fucking spare time, she fucking cooks food for people to try to get more money. And she can't even afford a fucking apartment with a roommate that's doing the same shit. That's how bad the economy is nowadays. So a lot of people also can't afford to drink. Granted, I do think that has become more of a beneficial thing. And when it comes to a lot of the financial insecurity that's happened, this, I can talk about factors for it in a different video, but I do want to bring up that that's another one of the largest reasons for the declining alcohol sales and consumption, because obviously on top of authority figures ruining their lives because of it, which many people from my generation have seen, a lot of people just can't afford it. Same goes for things like cigarettes, nicotine pouches, although for some reason, weirdly, not with vapes. I guess a lot of that, I honestly don't know. I don't care for vaping either, but at the same time, nicotine's like alcohol. Just if you're responsible with it, it won't ruin your life. Got to be careful with what you do. But anyway, with a lot of the circumstances that have been given down to us from the past generations, financially specifically, it just makes it super hard to have consistent access to those things. And I see a lot of people saying things like, oh, you won't get the same amount of social interaction as you would. Well, drinking's not the only thing that you could do to get social interaction. Take a few, I'm lucky enough to where I live in income-based housing, to where I'm not one of the people who's struggling a ton financially, and I know not everyone's able to do this, but what I like to do every now and then is take my friends out to a movie or to get some food or both. And if you can't do that, that is completely reasonable. I understand we are in a very rough part of the world financially right now. Or, I shouldn't say part, a very rough era financially. But there's more things to do than just money. You could just hop on a game online with them. You could just walk around, go to fucking park. If you're one of the people who does or who plays AR games like Pokemon Go, you can do that. Or just one of you guys goes to the other's house and just talks. It's really not all that difficult to get social interaction. You don't need alcohol for it. And if it makes it easier for you, that's no issue as long as you don't make it one. I don't like alcohol. I don't at all. But it's not the worst thing ever. And I'm tired of a lot of people acting like it is. It's very similar to something like weed, although I will say weed is significantly better overall, even though it can still cause occasional issues. It's not nearly as bad as we have seen with alcohol. Just please be responsible with it. You matter. People need you. Don't go down that dark path. If you're going to drink, do so responsibly. Don't get yourself to a point where you are physically dependent on it, or else you'll face horrific withdrawal symptoms. It's not worth it at all. Keep yourself safe no matter what. Make sure that if you drove to a bar or some establishment that serves alcohol, like I know a lot of concerts do, but always make sure that you either don't drink enough to get drunk or that you have extra money for an Uber. Do not drive drunk. There's a lot of things not to do drunk, but please just, it all comes back to being responsible with it. Because if you're not, you could ruin not just your own life, but a lot of other people's as well. And yeah, I do gotta say, that's one of the things I'm proud of my generation for. Granted, as I said, part of it's due to how financially unstable the current economy is, but at the same time, alcohol sales dropping almost 90% with this generation, it feels good to see. Even if a lot of the things I'm disappointed in my generation for, it it really does feel good to see that alcohol consumption is at an all-time low. And hopefully a lot of the issues with things like pill addictions can be stopped, especially because a lot of the issue from pill addictions comes from doctors hastily prescribing things. And I feel a lot of that probably comes down to the fact that a lot of people have been medicated since birth, pretty much. Or, okay, I shouldn't say since birth, but since like 1 or 2 years old. If I'll go a bit higher, actually. 1 or 2 is still too young. About 5 or 6 years old, that sounds a lot better. But yeah, a lot of people have been medicated for the vast majority of their life to the point where they are hooked and they literally don't know how to function without it because they don't have any memories before they were medicated. And I know for me, it had to get to a point where I had an overdose to try to kill myself. And after that, I just decided no, I'm not taking any more medications. I think that this has part of the reason to deal with why I am constantly so emotionally unstable, because I have been on so many different medications. Like, I can't even count them all in my head. It's been like 30 fucking plus. The only ones that I remember are escitalopram, Strattera, and Vyvanse. That's all I can remember. And yeah, it's a very fucked up thing that a lot of people aren't even being given the option, especially when they're children, to try and see how it is without medication. Medication shouldn't be a fix-all for everything. Alcohol shouldn't be a fix-all for everything. Weed shouldn't be a fix-all for everything. Nothing should be a fix-all. And with medication, some people do genuinely need it without having forced themselves to that point, which is one thing that is not really the case with something like alcohol or nicotine. But I'm trying to draw a comparison to have a bit more of a line for more people to understand that may not have been able to from prior context. Bottom line, I'm proud of Gen Z for decreased alcohol consumption. And honestly, I'm good with just the one drink I had the day after I turned 21. I'm comfortable. Don't need any more because, honestly, other than the money, I honestly don't think I may be able to get drunk because I know that I've taken like 12-second hits off of wax before and not gotten high, not felt a single thing. So, I don't know if I could ever get drunk, but even then, I just don't want to fall into that cycle of addiction because even if I know that a lot of it is overblown by the populace, I just don't want to risk it and fall into that myself, and I'm comfortable with that. I don't need alcohol. I don't need any sort of medication, unless it's specifically something like ibuprofen or acetaminophen for headaches, because I get fucking headaches and migraines all the time. But other than that, I'm just chill without anything. And I think a lot of people could not necessarily learn from that, but try to implement it into their lives very slowly, because a lot of people do need to adjust very heavily. So yeah, sorry if that got very, very rambly. I tend to unintentionally do so. But I'm proud of you, Gen Z.